Should alcohol in Canada come with cancer warnings like we see on cigarettes? It might sound like a far-fetched idea, but it's currently being reviewed in the Canadian Senate, with the campaign being led by Senator Patrick Brazeau.
So, colleagues, Bill S-202 is a modest but critical amendment to the Food and Drugs Act to require cancer warning labels on alcoholic products in Canada. Most Canadians know excessive alcohol consumption harms health, liver damage, impaired judgment, fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, and drunk driving, which kills 4 Canadians daily. The 2017 Canadian Substance Use Costs and Harms Report estimated alcohol-related costs at $16.6 billion annually, including healthcare and lost productivity. This is known as the alcohol deficit. But what most do not know is that alcohol causes at least 7 fatal cancers.
And that is a pretty big accusation. But the million-dollar question here is it true? The answer to that question entirely depends on how much alcohol you consume. There is a fundamental difference, of course, between consuming in moderation, considered, generally speaking, less than 2 drinks per day, and suffering with alcoholism. Now, the Senator's push for cancer warnings on alcohol is based on research from the Canadian Centre for Substance Use and Addiction, otherwise known as the CCSA. But there are some huge gaps in the organization's research. Let's break it down. Advocates often highlight relative risks to amplify concerns. For instance, claiming that 14 drinks a week can increase a woman's breast cancer risk by 27%. That sounds pretty alarming, but what happens when you look at the absolute risks instead? Using the CCSA's own data, the baseline risk from premature death from breast cancer is 17.3 per 100,000 women, or about 0.017%. A 27% relative increase bumps that to 22 per 100,000, a mere 0.005% absolute rise, or 0.05%. This is the similar risk elevation from using birth control pills, which many women accept for their benefits in preventing unwanted pregnancies. And for men, the pattern holds with colorectal cancer. The baseline is 13.9 premature deaths per 100,000, and 14 drinks weekly raises the relative risk by 20% to 16.7 per 100,000, or a 0.0028% absolute increase. Not only is the cancer risk for moderate drinkers almost statistically insignificant, there is a great irony in the CCSA data that the campaign is based upon. According to the CCSA's own data for men, up to 7 drinks a week actually lowers the risk of premature death from major issues like heart disease by 5%. Well, okay, so why does that matter? Well, heart disease is the leading cause of premature male deaths in Canada, claiming 47.5 lives per 100,000, far outpacing all alcohol-linked cancers combined. 7 drinks a week for men actually drops that heart disease risk to 45.12 per 100,000, saving about 2.38 lives per 100,000. This is a benefit that should be part of any honest labeling discussion, should it not? I spoke with Professor Dan Malik, chair of the Department of Health Sciences at Brock University, for what the experts have to say.
So this measure far exceeds the need, I guess, in this respect. People who talk about alcohol, I guess I call them anti-alcohol researchers and advocates, they often equate it with tobacco. They talk about the alcohol industry playing out of the tobacco playbook, all these strategies that are apparently being used by the alcohol industry, like the tobacco industry. The difference when we talk about cancer is exponential in the nature of how much worse, how much more, how much riskier, I guess, tobacco is compared to alcohol.
And Professor Malik raises an interesting point. Is it fair to equate smoking with moderate drinking, especially considering that around 80% of Canadian drinkers fall under the moderate drinker guidelines set out by Health Canada? The all-cancer risk increase for those Canadian drinkers is tiny, but the lung cancer risk, for example, for a daily smoker, is an increase of 2,400%. So would it be wise to equate smoking with drinking, given the huge gap in risk? And what would be the negative consequences of that?
There's a dangerous precedent, and also, there are a few dangerous precedents. One is, if you're going to put cancer warning labels on alcohol products, you're going to skew the understanding of what alcohol does to the human body and its effect on the human body. So it doesn't increase cancer risk by much, but there are other potential benefits. Now, the anti-alcohol researchers have focused on the harms, but there are some demonstrated biological benefits, and the vast amount of research has shown that moderate drinking is protective in what's called all-cause mortalities. The second thing is, this warning label fatigue. If you look at, they talk about how alcohol is considered I think it's called a class 1 carcinogen, and it's from the International Research Council on Alcohol, or on cancer. Well, so is processed meat. It's a class 1 carcinogen. A class 1 just means that it can cause cancer in humans. It doesn't mean that it's the same class as tobacco, but the excess is so different or the level of excess. I mean, diesel fumes also are carcinogenic in the same class, but you'd have to inhale a lot of diesel fumes to get cancer as well. So what do we do? Do we put labels on everything? Do you have a label on the back of a truck, a diesel truck, saying, "Stay back, you're going to get cancer if you get too close to this truck," or a label on the door because the driver is going to be exposed to diesel? I mean, we take it a reductio ad absurdum. We take it to its absurd extreme to see that this is, you can call it a slippery slope or anything like that. And it's, on top of that, it's kind of it risks for public health further discrediting public health measures. And I teach in a public health program. I'm not an anti-public health, but if you have all of these measures that increasingly, that crank up the panic or crank up the harm discourse, the harm language, eventually people just go, "Oh, not another one."
It's clear that the communication regarding alcohol and cancer is misleading, and that misdirection could undermine overall public health goals. But is there something more sinister here? Is this the return of the prohibitionist mindset? Here are Senator Patrick Brazeau's own words, and you can be the judge.
Senator Brazeau, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, honorable colleagues. Well, the fact remains that if we were here to discuss if we should legalize alcohol today, knowing what we know about alcohol, we would likely not proceed to do so. So instead, we are here to discuss putting cancer warning labels on alcoholic products in Canada.
Let that comment brew for a moment. So because we can't recriminalize alcohol, we'll instead push for cancer warnings. Back to you.